Hello once again, everybody, and thank you for joining me in the Bettor's Box. This is BangTheBook.com's MLB betting podcast for Thursday, July 18th. I am your host, Adam Burke. This and every edition of the Bettor's Box presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB and the number 200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus up to $500 for the sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus up to $500 for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. And, of course, as you know, and as I talked about on Monday's show, as we talked about on Wednesday this week with Brad Powers, as we talked about on Tuesday with Brian Blessing, lots of different sporting events out there right now. Obviously, with football coming up, all the future stuff that's out there for the NFL and college football. Want to make sure you've got multiple outs at your disposal. So if you don't have an account over at DSI, consider it. Take a look around. A lot of great things going on over there with different contests and stuff like that. But also, we've got plenty of sportsbook reviews over at BangTheBook.com as well. So you can check those out, see which sportsbooks fit best for you here for the upcoming college football and NFL seasons. In the meantime, though, still doing the Bettor's Box every Monday and Thursday here on Bang the Book Radio. As mentioned, we had Tuesday and Wednesday shows this week. We'll chat with Christian Pina tomorrow about the UFC card. Next Tuesday, we'll chat with Rolf Michaels about some more college football and some more conference breakdowns. So we're getting back into the full-on swing of things here on Bang the Book Radio. Not quite the full daily shows that will come back that second full week of August, but still getting a lot more content out there for you here on the airwaves as we get closer to the football seasons. My MLB picks and tips piece updated over at BangTheBook.com. All 32 NFL teams have been previewed. I posted the initial round of my college football power ratings yesterday. I'll be posting a full Google spreadsheet to BangTheBook.com, at least posting a link anyway, with all 130 teams, the schedules, my projected lines, season win total numbers, all that type of stuff. That'll come your way probably on Friday here. Got to write NASCAR today and keep working on those college football schedules and spreads and all that type of thing. So probably Friday with that, but you can keep an eye out for that over at BangTheBook.com. All right, so we got our traditional format here for our Thursday edition of the show. We start with a look beyond the box score. Then we'll go down the lines. I'll give you what closely amounts to a pick for tonight, probably more of a lean. I don't really love today's card, but then also preview the weekend ahead. So let's go ahead and start here with a look beyond the box score. And we take a look first at the Mets and the Twins as the Mets take both games here in this series. Kind of a blind squirrel theory game for the Mets in game one as far as the bullpen goes, but then crush the Twins bullpen in game two. Rough outing for Trevor May, who's been very good for the Twins overall. But when you look at this Minnesota Twins team, 40-18 over their first 58 games to start the season. Over their last 36 games, they are 18-18. So a lot of regression here for the Twins. Their historic offensive pace has slowed down. The bullpen concerns kind of showing up a little bit. Look, the Mets, we should move the Mets to the American League so that they can just use a DH all the time and improve their defense, kind of improve their lineup. But specifically looking at the Twins here, offensively for them, from March 28th, which was the start of the season, to June 2nd, a 275 average, 342 on base, a 511 slugging percentage, 355 WOBA, 120 WRC plus against weighted runs created plus, where 100 is average relative to the league. 120 would be 20% better than league average. And in that span, from March 28th to June 2nd, the Twins were first in batting average, fourth in on-base percentage, first by a large margin in slugging percentage, first in WOBA by 8 points, and then second in WRC plus, trailing only the Houston Astros. Since June 3rd, which is the period that we're talking about here where the Twins have played 500 ball at 18-18, since June 3rd up until July 17th, a 263 average, so down 12 points there, 324 on base, down 18 points there, a 467 slugging percentage, down 44 points in that department since June 3rd relative to the rest of the season. 332 WOBA, 105 WRC plus. They're 10th in batting average, 14th in on-base percentage, 8th in slugging percentage, 12th in WOBA, 13th in WRC plus. So essentially what we're looking at here is we're looking at a Twins team that has regressed back towards the mean quite considerably since June 3rd. So again, they were on a historic tear early on in the season. They were on pace for the highest slugging percentage ever. Now that's come down quite a bit for them. Again, 44 points lower over the last about 6 weeks or so. So for the Minnesota Twins here, still a very good team, still an improved rotation, a very smart front office, a very smart coaching staff with Rocco Baldelli at the helm. But their offense has regressed to a more sustainable clip, I would say. But this is one of those things where they have stepped up in class a little bit. They've played a little bit better of a schedule. They destroyed the Baltimore Orioles pitching staff for 6 or 7 games in the month of April. And they haven't had that luxury since. So they have come back to the pack a little bit here. Obviously, the Indians down to a 4-game deficit in the division. This is still a very good team going through what appears to be a rough patch. But at the same time, is this the new normal for this Minnesota Twins offense, which again is still top 10 in batting average and top 10 in slugging percentage, just not to the degree that they were early on in the season. So for the Twins here, we'll see if they right the ship offensively, if they get a little bit more consistency going with everything. But for right now, they are a team that has come back to the pack offensively, and that's not really a big surprise given the blistering start they got off to. The Giants swept a 4-gamer from the Rockies at Coors Field, and this Giants team has been absolutely outstanding of late offensively. They've scored 10 or more runs 5 times already in the month of July, 8 or more runs 9 times in the last 14 games, but they can't sustain this pace. This is a team that was bottom 5 in offense early on in the year. They were very, very poor in a lot of areas offensively. They have gotten a lot better here. But that being said, I don't think that this is remotely sustainable, and obviously not. When you talk about scoring historic amounts of runs in a short period of time, but I don't even think they're that close to as good as they've been. And I think that we'll start to see the market souring on the Giants here. We kind of saw this with the Braves. We sort of saw it to a degree with the Twins as well. When these teams are playing at an unsustainably high level, the market picks up on it and will play against those inflated prices or just a pace that a team can't keep up with. So I think we will see money come in against the Giants here in the near future. We did see it to a degree in this series there in Colorado, as I'll talk about here in a little bit. But this is not that good of an offensive team. And what's going to happen, I think, is that right now, the Giants would not be a seller. They're 2 games out of that second wild card spot. This can throw a wrench into all of the trade deadline plans across the league because a lot of people expected the Giants to be open for business. There were some hitters maybe that were available. Definitely Madison Bumgarner, who's a free agent at the end of the year. Definitely closer Will Smith. Maybe some of the other guys out there in that bullpen as well. If the Giants took a taker for Mark Mellinson's big salary or, maybe Sam Dyson, somebody like that. But right now, if they don't sell, there's a very small number of teams that are able to sell, and those teams don't really have a whole lot that contenders want. So the Giants here going on this run, obviously improving their standing, and they don't really care what happens to anybody else. But what's going to happen here, I think, is that when this balloon bursts for them, and it definitely will offensively, they don't have a very good rotation. The bullpen is still strong, but without the waiver trade deadline on August 31st, they're going to have to make some tough decisions here in short order. And certainly with the run that they're on, with the fact that Bruce Bochy is retiring at the end of the season, they'd like to give him one more run, one more bite at the apple. So this is an interesting dynamic here with San Francisco. We'll see what happens over the next week. But again, they are not able to sustain this offensive pace that they've had over the last month and a half. They're just not, the personnel isn't that good, not that talented. So we'll see what happens here. Obviously, Coors Field doing a lot to inflate offensive numbers here of late. Speaking of which, German Marquez gave up 11 runs in 2 2/3. Freeland was knocked around last week in his start. The Rockies are in a bad spot right now. Offensively, they're very good. The pitching staff isn't, and they're actually getting out-hit at home, which is a bad sign for them. So Colorado in a very tough spot. Maybe they are a team that does wind up being a seller. But once again, a lot of their very important components, contracts they can't move, or guys that they want to build around. So not a whole lot of trade assets for the Rockies right now as things currently stand. The Brewers took 2 out of 3 from the Braves here, and I think this was a big series victory for the Brewers before hitting the road, but they still have a lot of problems. I think it was very important for them to find a way to get it done there in Wednesday's game and take down this series. But Josh Hader gave up 2 more runs, albeit unearned. Junior Guerra struggled in the finale. He's kind of been thrust into that setup role with Jeremy Jeffress struggling quite a bit. The Braves are only 1 for 11 with runners in scoring position in that series finale. They've got a big series coming up against the Nationals that I'll talk about a little bit later in the show. But the Brewers still have problems. And while Ulyss Chacin is pitching better, while Chase Anderson is pitching better, their starters are pitching better. And that's a good thing. But also their starters only give them about 5 innings to start. So their bullpen problems are a big, big deal right now. They're a team that's been linked to Will Smith of the Giants. They're a team that would obviously love to get somebody like Brad Hand from the Indians, although I don't think the Indians are going to be a seller now. So, the Brewers have a lot of problems. And when they win these games here, on paper they look great. Winning a series from the Braves is awesome. But it doesn't do enough for me to overshadow the issues that they have. And we'll see if those issues pop up here as they head on down to Arizona to start a 4-game set this weekend. The Cardinals took 2 out of 3 from the Pirates, but once again, this is another series that was kind of like window dressing as far as I'm concerned. Chris Archer was pretty good in his Wednesday start, took some money in that one as well. But this was a series where the Cardinals still didn't generate a whole lot of opportunities. The Pirates had 24 at-bats with a runner in scoring position. The Cardinals only had 15. So offensively, they're still a disaster. I don't love Mike Schilt's lineup construction, although not a lot of options here with a low on-base percentage lineup for the Cardinals. But their bullpen got it done in this series. Miles Mikolas scattered 8 hits in a complete game in the first one. But the Cardinals still have a lot of problems as well. And this is one of those series where, they beat a team that they're supposed to. And, yeah, that's all well and good. But the Cardinals still have a lot of problems. They still haven't figured this thing out. And I'll be curious to see how they're lined and what kind of action they get in the marketplace opening up this series here against the Cincinnati Reds over the next 4 days. Because the Cardinals, to me, are just not a very good team. The starting rotation doesn't impress me a whole lot. Jack Flaherty's still trying to figure it out. The bullpen is hit or miss. They've got some guys that are good. They've got some guys that are very bad. And obviously Carlos Martinez in a new role. He had some hiccups here in this series against the Pirates. But offensively, they're just not good. And I don't know how many bats are actually going to be out there at the trade deadline. With so many teams, in the playoff mix, without the waiver deadline where you can pick up, some of those big salary rental guys, stuff like that. I don't know how many bats are there. So the Cardinals are still a team, I'm not going to say they're on my shit list necessarily, but they're not a team that I'm looking to back really in any context all that often here in the near future. How about the Arizona Diamondbacks? 28 runs in 2 games down in Texas against Rangers pitching. We hit Arizona as a dog on Tuesday, played the first 5 Wednesday. But really here, the focus to me is the Rangers. And I think the Rangers need to be a seller. They've got some bullpen arms that maybe some teams could be interested in. Shin-Soo Choo would draw a nice return as a guy that, obviously if someone wants to take on that contract, there's a guy that's really performed very well here so far this season. Not much of an outfielder, but he's, a DH type guy for an American League team or for an NL team that has a really good center fielder. But, they need to consider getting rid of some of the guys that are attractive on the trade market because they're not a very good team. They've fallen well behind the A's now in the West. They may very well be behind the Angels the rest of the way also. They're probably a seller to me. I don't know how much currency they have to move around, but, this is a team that I think was a big overachiever early on in the year. A lot of smoke and mirrors with the pitching staff. The offense has not been good for the better part of 2 months. The Rangers are a fade team to me, and they're also a team I think should sell here as we head on into the trade deadline. One more series I want to touch on real quickly here, as the Royals are looking for a 4-game sweep of the White Sox here today. It's Ross Detweiler and Brad Keller in that one. The White Sox have dropped 6 straight. The Royals have won 5 of 6. And when I talked a week ago heading into the second half about some of those standings outliers from Pythagorean win-loss and a base run standpoint, the White Sox were an overachiever. The Royals were an underachiever. Royals get the Tigers and White Sox here out of the break, play very well. The White Sox dropping 6 straight. these teams kind of ending up where they were supposed to be now based on those alternative standings metrics. And it doesn't always work out that way, no question about it, but I just wanted to point that out here on today's show. Let's look at some small sample size stuff for the second half real quickly here. We've only played baseball games for a week. Last Thursday we had the Astros and the Rangers. Really, we've only played baseball for, 5 days, Friday through Wednesday here. But, or I guess 6 days as the case would be. But as we look at what's happened so far, 265 home runs already hit in the second half. Slash line of 264 with a 331 on base, 460 slugging, 333 weighted on base average, a 106 WRC plus. In the first half, obviously the cold weather in the month of April, stuff like that. The first half slash 252 average, 322 on base, 432 slugging, a 319 WOBA, a 96 WRC plus. So in the second half here so far, average up 8 points, on base percentage, or average up 12 points, on base percentage up 9 points, slugging percentage up 28 points, a 14-point increase in weighted on base average, a 17.1% home run to fly ball percentage here in the second half. That will regress. All of this stuff will regress from what we've seen offensively here to start the second half, but you've got to wonder why. Is it the pitchers shaking off rust? Is it the warm weather? Fresher hitters? It is terrifying to bet an under right now. A lot of runs being scored. Coors Field certainly plays a lot into the equation here as well, with 2 series at Coors have just been off the charts ridiculous when it comes to offense. If we took Coors Field out of the equation, I'm sure we'd look a lot closer to the first half slash line. But still, even with Coors Field, a 28-point increase in slugging percentage is substantial. A lot of home runs here coming out of the second half. I don't know when this starts to regress, when this starts to normalize, but we will probably see some inflation in the totals market. And like I said, it's scary as hell to bet any kind of under in any context right now. But the value will be on unders as we get into August and September, as the games start to mean a little bit more, as things tighten up a little bit. But for right now, a massive surge in home runs in the second half. So that's something you want to factor into the equation here, not just with totals, but also with sides betting, with the teams that, hit for power, having a lot of success here so far in the second half. I want to take a look here at WOBA splits in terms of times through the order. Get some live betting angles to consider, or some betting opportunities in general. If you've got a guy, if you've got a matchup where a guy struggles the first time through the order and that other team has a bullpen advantage, maybe that's a betting opportunity that you want to look to take advantage of here in the second half. So, qualified starting pitchers only. That's a very important distinction to make because that does increase the sample size of these stats that are out there. But first time through the order, the highest WOBAs. Adrian Sampson, 425. He got blasted last night. His first time through the order as a reliever for the Rangers in that game against the Diamondbacks. Steven Matz, 410. Kyle Freeland, 397. Jordan Zimmerman, 395. Nick Pivetta, 385. Glenn Sparkman, 384. Michael Wacha, 380. Jose Urania, 379. Mike Leake, 374. Jordan Lyles, 370. So those are the bottom 10 in WOBA allowed the first time through the order. So those are guys that really struggle to settle into games. So again, you're talking about a team with a bullpen advantage, and they're going up against a Pivetta or a Zimmerman or a Wacha or a Leake or a Lyles, something like that. Probably a bet that you want to look to consider for that full game there, because those guys do put their teams behind the 8 ball very early on in the game. The best 10 the first time through the order: Chris Paddock, 208. Jack Flaherty, interestingly enough, 214. Domingo Germán, 224. Yanni Chirinos, 226. Jacob deGrom, 228. Eric Lauer, 234. Anibal Sanchez, 238. Andrew Heaney, 239. Wade Miley, Madison Bumgarner, Sonny Gray, all 245. So those guys doing a good job to keep their teams in the game early on, get settled in a little bit. Yeah, and something you want to factor into the equation from a live betting standpoint. If you want to go against Paddock or Flaherty or Germán or deGrom or Lauer or something like that, maybe you wait. Maybe you get a better price to go against those guys in a live betting context, maybe in the second or third or fourth inning, something like that. So those guys have done a very good job against the lineups the first time through, the first list of guys I named off, guys that have really struggled to get through the first time. How about the second time through? Again, qualified starting pitchers only here from a WOBA standpoint. Trevor Cahill, 435. I'm not sure if he's going to come back at any point this season or not, but he's up there. Once again, Adrian Sampson, 433. Kyle Freeland makes another appearance at 433. Drew Pomerantz at 430. Trevor Williams, 414. Nick Margevicius, Zach Eflin, 408. David Hess, 403. Aaron Sanchez, 402. Dakota Hudson, 397. Chris Sale, 396 WOBA against the second time through the order. Other notable names here, John Lester, Michael Waka, Spencer Turnbull, Kevin Gaussman, Griffin Canning, Mike Fultonevich, Herman Marquez. So these are guys that struggle to adjust that second time through the order. And again, a live betting angle here. A guy like Chris Sale, dominant type of guy, right? But maybe he struggles the second time through the order, as these numbers suggest. Dakota Hudson, same thing, struggles the second time through. Margevicius and Eflin. Trevor Williams, a guy who was very good last season, not so good here this season, the second time through the order, really getting to him. So look for live betting opportunities to go against guys like that who do struggle the second time through the order. How about the guys that are really good the second time through the order? Again, WOBA against is the statistic here. Justin Verlander at 224, Hyun-Jin Ryu 227, Luis Castillo 228, Sonny Gray makes another appearance here, 231, Eduardo Rodriguez and Zach Wheeler 240, Walker Buehler 243, Joey Lucchesi 249, Scherzer 252, Shane Bieber and Mike Soroka 253 and 255 respectively. Again, you're talking about some of the best in Major League Baseball this season that have the best numbers the second time through the order. That should not come as a surprise to you at all whatsoever, because when you're good, when you have a lot of depth to your arsenal, you can get through the second time, in relatively painless fashion. When you're a guy that doesn't have depth to your arsenal, it's a struggle for you. If you're somebody who walks a lot of guys, tends to be a struggle for you that second time through. So the elite of the elite are really good the second time through. So keep that in mind from a live betting standpoint where, let's say Verlander gives up a couple first inning runs, something like that, or Shane Bieber does too, live betting opportunity, because those guys are typically going to shut it down. So that's a good way when you talk about not wanting to lay really big numbers. A lot of those guys that I mentioned there, Verlander, Ryu, Castillo to a degree, Buehler, Scherzer, Bieber now, those are guys that wind up with big pregame numbers. So that's one way to kind of cut down on the juice, is that if you don't have to take minus 225, they're down 1-0 going into the third inning, something like that, and you can get minus 130, minus 135, or something even lower. That's a good opportunity for you there. Those are good live betting situations for you to take a guy who should be good the rest of the way at a discounted price just because he gave up a run or something like that, maybe 2 runs. So good live betting opportunities there. Look at those times through the order splits. You can go to the splits leaderboard over at Fangraphs. You can customize it any way you want to, which is what I did here. You can find out those guys that are good the first time through, struggle the second time through, struggle the first time through, good the second time through, whatever the case may be. You can find those over there at Fangraphs. Finally, the third time through the order here, much, much smaller samples that we're looking at for a lot of these guys. Some of these guys just don't work as deep into games anymore. Nick Pivetta, 460, the highest one. Ivan Nova, 454. Jorge Lopez, 443. Dallas Keuchel, 435. He's struggled working deeper into games. Not a big surprise, trying to get a feel for his arsenal, and also not having worked a whole lot earlier on in the season. Reynaldo Lopez, 433. Jack Flaherty, James Paxton, 419. Both of those guys struggling the third time through. Anibal Sanchez, 417. How about this one? Sonny Gray, a 415 WOBA against the third time through. 4th best the second time through, and tied for 10th best the first time through. But the third time through, Gray runs into trouble with that 415 WOBA against. Jay Happ, John Gray, Anthony DeSclafani, Trevor Richards, some other guys that struggle the third time through the order. How about the guys that are the best the third time through the order? Chris Paddock, 153 WOBA against. Charlie Morton, 200. Caleb Smith, 219. Rich Hill, 220. Same thing for Yanni Chirinos. Felix Hernandez, 224. It's an interesting one. Justin Verlander, 229. Zach Greinke, 236. Glenn Sparkman, amazingly enough, 236. Daniel Mengden, 236. Here's where you would expect Chris Sale to be good, and he is at 239. Other names here that are very good the third time through: Spencer Turnbull, Max Scherzer, Steven Strasburg, Soroka, Brad Peacock, John Means, Patrick Corbin, Shane Bieber. Usually not a big surprise. When these elite level guys are pitching well, they stay pitching well. You know, when they struggle early on in the game, they either don't make it the third time through or kind of figure it out on the fly and sort of get their teams through 6 innings. So, again, Adam at bangthebook.com, the way to get the notes for the show. Again, I think this has some pregame application, but a lot of live betting application with these times through the order splits. Let's go down the lines here. Talk about some line moves that we've seen dating back to when I was on the air on Monday. Saw Clayton Kershaw money come in against Zach Eflin. The Dodgers blew out the Phillies in that game. Really bad situational spot, but didn't seem to affect them at all whatsoever. We saw heavy money come in on Kyle Hendricks against Luis Castillo. Castillo, a left-on-base percentage regression guy, a BABIP regression guy as well. I agreed with that line move. The Reds did win that game, but look for more money to come in against Luis Castillo here in his next few outings. Saw Adam Plutko money come in for the Indians against the Tigers. That was an interesting line. The initial move came down on the Tigers. Big buyback after the fact. A fade of Daniel Norris once again there in that game for the Tigers. Saw some Kansas City money early against Lucas Giolito. Then we got that late buyback once again that we've seen a lot here so far this season. Royals did win that game with Jake Junis on the bump. Then finally on Monday, Herman Marquez took a lot of money against Jeff Samardzija and the Giants. Marquez gave up 11 runs. He's been terrible at Coors Field this year. Was good for about a 6-start stretch last year, but early on in the year, he was very poor at Coors. We'll see if he continues to take money at home, because right now, he's untouchable at home. You cannot bet him at home. He's just not good in the thin air environment there at Coors Field. Tuesday, we saw substantial money on Walker Buehler against Vince Velasquez and the Phillies. Not a big surprise there in that one. Brandon Woodruff took money against the Atlanta Braves. Woodruff's going to take money a lot as the most trustworthy starter in that Brewers rotation. We saw some heavy Jack Flaherty money on Tuesday against Dario Agrizal and the Pirates. The Pirates came away with the win there. Flaherty was very good, but the bullpen coughing it up there in that one for the Cardinals. Saw very, very heavy Michael Pineda money on Tuesday against the Mets and Steven Matz. Now, Michael Pineda has been very good here of late, and Pineda is a guy that the market loved for the longest time, kind of backed off of that stance a little bit. Now they're back to buying in and believing in him. So he took substantial money on Tuesday. The Mets did win that game, but Pineda pitched pretty well. Look for that to be a thing going forward here. Michael Pineda will take money on the overnights in a lot of situations. Wednesday, we saw money on Chris Archer. And once again, Archer kind of cut from that same Michael Pineda mold in that the markets used to love him. Had a higher ERA, lower xFIP, expected that positive regression. Then he fell out of favor with the market for a while. Bettors have taken notice of the recent results that he's had. He talked over the All-Star break about getting back to what works for him. So Archer taking some money there on Wednesday against the Cardinals. Didn't work out as the Cardinals won the game, but Archer did pitch pretty well. Saw very heavy John Gray money on Wednesday against the Giants and Sean Anderson. A lot of money coming in on Sean Anderson lately. That's one you can expect on the overnights, almost with regularity. People coming in to fade Giants right-hander Sean Anderson. Strong Chris Paddock steam on Wednesdays against Trevor Richards. Paddock takes a no-hitter into the eighth in that one. Homer Bailey took money for the A's in his first start against Eric Swanson and the Mariners. Not a surprise there. Bailey was taking money with the Royals, so not a surprise to see that carry over with a much better Oakland team. Very heavy move on Mike Clevenger and the Indians last night. Seeing a lot less buyback here post-All-Star break. The line moves that we've seen are largely sticking. We saw that move with Clevenger up into the $3 range yesterday. Saw money on Garrett Cole once again, up about 25 cents against the Angels and Felix Pena. Astros blew away the Angels there in that one. But, as you look at some of these moves here, specifically on elite-level starters, those happen and they stay. And those elite guys have taken money a lot so far this season. That kind of speaks to what I've talked about before with the minus 180 favorites being very profitable over the last 5 years. That's been the case with, a lot of those elite starting pitchers. And that seems to be the case here so far this season as well. Thursday, handful of line moves. We saw some early Padres money on Dinelson Lamet against Caleb Smith. Early Dodgers money on Ross Stripling against the Phillies and Aaron Nola. Nola, the only official play in the spreadsheet today with the Phillies. Obviously, that one will start before I even get the show posted. So my apologies for that, but do like the Phillies in that one. Hopefully it comes through. Seeing Steven Strasburg money for the Nationals against Julio Teheran and the Braves. Then we saw some buybacks. So kind of an interesting yo-yoing with that line there. Big series for both teams. I'll talk about that one here in a second. So Wade Miley take money at open against Matt Harvey. Big fade of Matt Harvey going on in the market on his return for the Angels. Not much I love tonight. Nationals, Braves under is a slight lean. Strasburg should be good. I think Teheran is very underappreciated in the marketplace. So Nationals, Braves under a slight lean, the closest thing I have to a play for tonight. All right, so let's preview the weekend here. Got 4 series to talk about and then one more overriding point. We start with the A's and the Twins. Mike Fiers, Kyle Gibson tonight, Chris Bassett, Jake Odorizzi on Friday, Brett Anderson, Jose Barrios on Saturday, Daniel Mengden, Michael Pineda on Sunday. The Twins really aren't accustomed to the role that they're in, and maybe some adversity kind of settling in for this team now where they are a 500 team over the last little while. They got off to that blistering start. They've come back to the pack. The A's are charging hard in the wild card. The Indians are charging hard in the Central. A lot of playoff implications here in this series. Obviously, still a lot of games left. A lot of games left to go with 65 or so odd games left to be played. But this is a big series for the Twins. I think they need to go out there and beat a good team and sort of stop this little bit of bleeding. Again, 18-18 over 36 games, not a big deal over the course of the season. But because the Indians are 24-10 in that span, it's become a big deal. So I think the Twins have a really big series here. An increase in hard contact for Jake Odorizzi of late. Will the A's be the team to deliver that regression? I just talked about Pineda and how well he's been pitching. Both of these teams have bullpen issues. I'm not going to be too involved or not going to be financially invested in this series, but as an Indians fan, I'll certainly be emotionally invested. But this is going to be a tough one to handicap, I think, because the Twins have the starting pitcher advantage in virtually every game in this series, but their offense is struggling. The A's have gotten their bats going quite well, one with a big second half push once again, much like what we saw last year. So I guess it's a tough series to handicap for a variety of different reasons. Nationals and the Braves. You got Steven Strasburg, Julio Teheran tonight, Patrick Corbin, Mike Soroka tomorrow, Anibal Sanchez and to be determined Saturday. Then the Nationals are to be determined on Sunday against Bryce Wilson. That's Sunday Night Baseball. The Nationals will go home and host the Rockies. The Braves are off on Monday, so no situational angles here for this series unless we get a marathon game like we saw last weekend. But this is a big spot for the Nationals here to make up some ground. The Braves have the better bullpen, but also some starter deficits here in this one. And the Nationals offense has been very good. These two offenses in their current forms may be kind of equal. So we'll see what happens here with this series. I will point out that the Atlanta Braves, I talked about this last week. They were on pace for 96 wins. Their season win total 90.5. Some of the advanced standings metrics didn't really love them. Will we see Nationals money in this series? I definitely think it is a possibility, in particular with who's going on Saturday and Sunday for the Braves. We don't know on Saturday yet. Bryce Wilson on Sunday, not going to inspire a ton of confidence. So we could see some Nationals movement here in this series. Mike Soroka, a little bit of a regression candidate as well. So maybe Nationals money on Friday, and then we'll see what happens Saturday and Sunday. But this should be a very good series, to say the least. Cardinals and the Reds here. Dakota Hudson, Tanner Roark tonight. Adam Wainwright, Tyler Mahle tomorrow. Miles Mikolas, Luis Castillo Saturday. Jack Flaherty, Anthony DeSclafani on Sunday. When you look at the Reds here in this series, all 4 starters fare very well against right-handed hitters. And this is already a Cardinals lineup that is not good overall. And they're very right-handed heavy. So this could be a great series for the Reds pitching staff. Roark, substantial platoon splits lefty and righty. Male, same thing. Castillo's pretty good against everybody. DeSclafani with big platoon splits also. Could this be a rare under series? I just talked about all the scary things about the second half here with betting unders, but this could be one of them because the Cardinals, their pitching staff, it's not great, but the Reds offense has been very inconsistent here so far this season. Wainwright's got that heavy curveball. Mikolas has been pitching a lot better. Flaherty gets money pretty much every time he goes out there with the expectation that he gets better. I think we probably see some Cardinals money Saturday and Sunday here. But again, could be a lower scoring series with a Reds pitching staff that, it's almost like the Reds expected the Cardinals to be their biggest opponent in the division. Maybe they didn't buy into the Cubs for whatever reason, but it's almost like they planned for beating the Cardinals with this right-handed heavy rotation. So we'll see here. I think this could be a series where the Reds pitching staff does have success. Could be some unders here in this series. May have some personal plays. I don't know if I'll have spreadsheet plays on the under with how scary those are, but could have some personal plays here on the unders in this series. Brewers and the Diamondbacks. Zach Davies, Merrill Kelly tonight. I got a lot of thoughts on this game over in my write-up at bangthebook.com. No play, but a lot of thoughts. Ulis, Chacin, Taylor Clark Friday. You've got Gio Gonzalez and Zach Greinke on Saturday. Then Brandon Woodruff and to be determined on Sunday. Probably going to be Alex Young for the Diamondbacks, who pitched pretty well against the Rangers there on Tuesday night. But, the Brewers are really struggling of late. Major bullpen issues. You've got 3 5-and-fly types of guys plus Brandon Woodruff here. The Brewers do run into Greinke, but avoid Robbie Ray. Is this a higher scoring series? I think there's a chance that it is. Davies is a regression candidate. It just hasn't shown up yet. Merrill Kelly, kind of an iffy guy, small margin for error. Chacin against a balanced Diamondbacks lineup, I don't love. Clark, a lefty against the Brewers, Clark's a righty, but not a guy that's particularly all that good. Gio Gonzalez off the shelf. Greinke wasn't great in his first start of the second half. You would think he'd be better, but hey, maybe he just doesn't have a feel for everything. So it could be some higher scoring games here in this Brewers and Diamondbacks series. We'll have to see what these totals look like. Today's total 10.5, too rich for my blood, but we'll see what these totals look like the rest of the way between these two teams. Finally, one more thing I want to touch on real quickly here. A lot of trade deadline chatter is going to perk up. You've got no waiver deadline this year, so all deals have to be completed by July 31st. And a lot of times teams that acquire pitchers want to maximize their innings. So they're going to go out and get that starter before he makes another start for his team. You want to get those relievers, get as many appearances as possible. But with the playoff picture, as I mentioned at the top of the show, very congested right now. A lot of contending teams. The bad teams don't have a lot of tradable assets. This next week will determine a lot in terms of contenders and pretenders. And we are still about 2 weeks away from the trade deadline. But this is a week, and next week especially, we got to see who's for real and who's not. And a lot of these teams going to play with some extra emphasis, some extra gumption, hoping that they can put themselves in position to be buying teams as opposed to selling off guys that are in that clubhouse. So a lot of trade deadline chatter is going to happen. You're going to see guys scratch. You're going to see people running to social media to find out what's going on. You're going to see starters pitching knowing that trade rumors are there. Same thing with the relievers. So some dicey times here over the next 2 weeks for a lot of these teams. A lot of news, a lot of rumors going to be floating around. It's a tough time for these players. They are human after all. So keep that in mind when you've got relievers that are in primary roles, starters that are being talked about as trade candidates. Those are tough spots. You don't really know how guys are going to react to those things. So keep that all in mind here over the next 2 weeks. Tread lightly in some of those games where you've got a lot of these trade considerations. Coming up on Friday, we'll chat UFC with Christian Pina. Monday, Bettor's Box. Tuesday, Rolf Michaels. Bettor's Box next Thursday. UFC next Friday. Lots of stuff going on here on Bang the Book Radio. Go check out my power ratings over at bangthebook.com. And also, I intend to get that spreadsheet posted sometime tomorrow, hopefully. So you can keep an eye out for that over at the website as well. That'll do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. And remember that you will never strike out when you're in the Bettor's Box.